When we think about hitting rock bottom, what comes to mind? Probably some big dramatic collapse, right? A moment of absolute chaos. But what if that whole picture is wrong? What if the real bottom isn't a crisis at all, but a moment of quiet, unnerving clarity?
And this idea just nails it, doesn't it? It completely challenges how we think about our own breaking points. It suggests that the end of a struggle isn't this loud, explosive thing. Instead, it's a quiet, internal click, a moment where the chaos finally makes sense.
So let's kind of paint a picture here. Imagine someone who, on the surface, is doing okay. They're going to work, they're managing their life, but underneath, the psychological cost is just getting to be too much. They're not falling apart for everyone to see, but inside, there's this one huge question that they just can't ignore anymore.
And this is the question that flips the whole script. The struggle stops being about strength versus weakness. It becomes a really simple, practical question of risk. The focus shifts from, can I keep going, to what's going to happen to me if I do? And that's the real conflict, right there.
Now, you'd think the answer to a question like that would show up in a moment of total panic, right? But weirdly enough, it didn't. It arrived in a moment of calm, when all the emotional noise finally died down enough for a really clear, objective look at things.
This slide really shows you the whole shift in thinking. That old question, can I push through this? That's a test of your willpower, of your grit. But the new one, what will pushing through do? That's not a challenge. That's a request for data. It's a move from sheer force to simple cause and effect. And that right there is the game changer.
And once that question was asked in the right way, wow, the answer was just brutally clear. No gray areas. Continuing down that path wasn't going to lead to some heroic breakthrough. It was just a path of slow erosion, a steady wearing away of your health, your judgment, your very self.
And man, this is such an important point. You'd think that moment of clarity would feel good, right? Like a weight off your shoulders. But no, it was heavy. It was this solemn, deep understanding that a particular road had just ended. No more debating, no more hoping for a different outcome. There was just this finality.
Okay, so up to this point, this whole fight has been happening inside one person's head. But what happens when that private battle goes public? When you bring in outside perspectives like family or especially doctors, the whole dynamic changes completely.
And this is where everything gets turned on its head. Internally, you frame it as stress, as something you just got to power through. But after a doctor gives it a clinical name, well, now that perseverance doesn't look like a virtue anymore. It looks like a huge risk. What used to be your personal struggle is now a shared concern. A line has been drawn in the sand by someone else.
So this brings us to what the real danger was in this situation. And it's probably not what you're thinking. It's not about some big, dramatic collapse. No, it's about something way more subtle, and it's a danger that willpower alone has absolutely no power over.
I mean, think about it. For this person, and let's be honest, for a lot of us, our default setting for problems is just more effort. You hit a wall, you just apply more discipline, more willpower, and you push through. And that strategy works great until the day it doesn't.
And here's the logic that breaks that whole model. Medical reality comes in with an idea that goes against everything you've ever learned about pushing through. It says, hey, the problem isn't your lack of resolve. The problem is the stimulus, the environment itself. The only solution isn't to push harder, it's to remove the thing causing the pressure in the first place.
And we're not talking about a gentle suggestion here. This wasn't, hey, maybe take a long weekend. This was a direct, non-negotiable medical order. Stop, period. It was a complete override of personal will, all because the danger of continuing was just too great.
So what was this really big danger? It's a condition called chronicity, and it's pretty insidious. Basically, it's when a temporary, acute problem, like a bad case of the flu, doesn't go away. Instead, it becomes your new normal. The symptoms just become part of who you are, and your entire baseline for what feels okay is permanently lowered.
And in real life, this permanent damage isn't some big, loud explosion. It's a quiet narrowing of your entire world. You have less tolerance for things, less trust in yourself and other people. And maybe the most tragic part of all, you start to accept these new limits, not as symptoms of a condition, but as essential parts of your character. You think, well, I guess this is just who I am now.
Which brings us to our final, and I think most important idea.
We need to totally redefine what we mean by the bottom, because it's not a failure. It's actually something way more powerful and constructive. You see, reaching this point of clarity means that the endless negotiation in your head is finally over. No more what-ifs, no more trying to compromise with a situation that's just not sustainable. The debate is finished, and what's left is a kind of firm resolve.
And here it is. This is the core takeaway. We're all conditioned to see hitting the bottom as a personal failure, a sign of weakness. But a much more accurate and honestly a much more empowering way to see it is as an act of boundary recognition. It's the moment you finally see and acknowledge a hard limit.
It's the wisdom to finally see that a path you're on doesn't lead anywhere good. It only leads to more harm. And in that moment, you refuse to take one more step. That refusal isn't a collapse, it's a stabilizing act. It's the thing that stops the whole cascade of failure before it can do its worst damage.
So, I'll leave you with this to chew on. What if we reframe this whole experience? What if hitting rock bottom isn't the end of the story, but the moment you actually take back control? What if it's not a failure of endurance, but the very first conscious, deliberate step you take towards getting well?